Who can beat the Georgia Bulldogs? That's the question as we look ahead to the 2023 regular season schedule. How about them, Kirby?
Told them, how about the fucking dogs? That's what I told them.
The Georgia Bulldogs have won back-to-back national championships and have gone 30-1 over the last two seasons in the process, including a perfect 15-0 season last year. Now, of course, Georgia's going to lose a game at some point, but is that going to be in 2023? When you bring up the Dogs' 2023 schedule, everybody's going to point to how easy it looks on paper. But they're always going to conveniently leave out the fact that the Dogs have aggressively scheduled non-conference opponents over the last few years. And this season, they had the Oklahoma Sooners on the road, no less, scheduled for Game 2. With Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league in 2024, the SEC told Georgia that they couldn't play Oklahoma this year. As a result, the 2023 season schedule shakes out like this. On September 2nd, the Dogs play UT Martin at home. Then on September 9, they have Ball State. That's the replacement game for the Oklahoma Sooners road game that got kicked out by the SEC. The next week, we get into league play on September 16th against the South Carolina Gamecocks. This is a game that people usually point to as one where Georgia could possibly trip up early in the year. I know Spencer Rattler's coming back for the Gamecocks, and that was a big deal. Shane Beamer has that program moving in the right direction, but I don't think they're ready to compete with the Dogs in Athens just yet. The next week, the Dogs get UAB at home to close out the opening month of the season, which saw them have 4 home games. Now, that's advantageous for the Dogs because they are replacing their offensive coordinator with Mike Bobo, and they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. Getting to do those things at home between the hedges, well, that has to be an advantage. In Week 5, the Dogs go on the road for the first time to the Plains to take on the Auburn Tigers, in a continuation of the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Now, this game can be a little tricky, but I don't think, even with their new head coach and new offensive coordinator, that the Tigers are going to have things figured out just yet, and Georgia should be able to get that win on the road. Just know it could be a little dicey. As we move into October, the Dogs continue league play, welcoming in the Kentucky Wildcats between the hedges in Athens. I just don't think that Mark Stoops can bring his Wildcats between the hedges and get that victory. 6 games in and halfway through the season, we've already pointed out a couple of places that could prove to be a little tricky for the Bulldogs in the 2023 regular season schedule. The home game against South Carolina, and then the road game against the Auburn Tigers. As we make our way through October, the Dogs continue league play, taking on Vanderbilt on the 14th, and then they'll close out the month after a bye week with the annual game in Jacksonville against the Gators. Now, this game against Florida, you just never know what's going to happen. Florida appears to be a mess, but I've seen too many things go down in Jacksonville that I just can't explain, so I'm never going to count this game as a victory for the Dogs until all zeros are on the clock. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy the kind of content we're producing, please take a second and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps us get the video out to other dog fans just like you. As the calendar turns to November, we start to play the games that people will remember, the ones that will define the season. And November in 2023 will be no different for the Dogs. They open the month on the 4th against Missouri. The Dogs struggled on the road last year in Columbia before finally pulling out the win, but I don't think Missouri is going to have the horses to get the job done in Athens this year. The next week, the Dogs welcome in the Ole Miss Rebels. This is one game that could be a little tricky for the Dogs because we don't know exactly what Ole Miss is going to be. They're going to have a new quarterback, most likely. They definitely have a new defensive coordinator, and they've brought in a bunch of transfers from the portal yet again. How Lane Kiffin stirs the pot down there in Mississippi and gets this team to gel is going to determine what kind of challenge this is going to be for Georgia here in November. We're just going to have to wait and see. One thing's for sure, though, Mississippi should be talented enough to be on the Dogs' radar as a possible threat. Next up comes the game that most people are going to point to as the biggest threat to the Bulldogs pulling off another undefeated regular season. They have to go on the road to take on the Tennessee Volunteers in Knoxville. Coming off a great season in 2022, Tennessee is going to have to replace some of the players that made that season so great as they head into 2023. Georgia has won 6 straight in the series, and they're going to look to continue that dominance on the road in Knoxville. To wrap up the season, the Dogs head down to Atlanta to take on the Jackets in another bout of clean, old-fashioned hate. The Dogs should take care of business here, and they could very well be playing for another 12-0 season when they get to Atlanta. So there you have it, a look at the 2023 regular season schedule for the Dogs. Do you think they're going to go undefeated again? Be sure to drop me a comment below and let me know. Let them know, Kirby.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that.